Hey yo, ATL, stand up. You're locked in with the livest, realest, rawest talk in the game. This is the Bro Code Podcast ATL, where the culture talks back, the vibes stay heavy, and the code always respected. Don't touch that dial. Keep it right here, because we breaking the code live from the A.
Check, 1 2 1 2. Live across the universe.
Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen,
It's about that time, y'all.
you are now in the mix. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Bro Code Podcast. Join Kennedy Lucas, Terry Lester, and Jackson Smith as they break down the biggest plays, share locker room banter, and keep it 100 on sports hot takes. Gear up, because this is where the real talk begins. Cause this is where the real talk begins. Gear up. Cause this is where the real talk begins.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Bro Code Podcast ATL. Here's the latest in sports news. You certainly can't say it was a boring Sunday. While there were a few blowout victories here and there, we saw 7 of the 12 games Sunday decided by 7 points or fewer. Outside of the 49ers, who firmly shut the door on the Saints to seal up their second consecutive close victory on the road to start the season. None of those wins felt resounding. 3 teams pulled off comebacks by scoring in the final 2 minutes of regulation or overtime. The Cowboys topped the Giants. The Bengals beat the Jaguars, and the Colts pulled out a last-second victory over the Broncos. I'm going to break down those 3 games. What happened? How did those teams fuel their comebacks? Are these types of performances sustainable? And should we feel concerned about the 3 losers of those games? Let's begin in Dallas, where the Cowboys needed help from one of the superstars it still has to overcome the absence of the one it traded away. And if you want to read more about the Giants side of things, come back Thursday when I'll have my annual look at the league's 0-2 teams and how they're essentially all about to suit up for playoff games in Week 3. It'll be the Chiefs' first appearance in that column too. Demoted to the 1 p.m. ET window, after seemingly decades of being a nationally televised game between 2 of the league's most storied franchises, the Cowboys and Giants responded with their own version of last week's Ravens-Bills game. After a Dak Prescott interception started the second half, and the Giants responded by stalling out in the red zone and turning the ball over on downs, these 2 teams scored on 9 of the remaining 10 possessions in regulation. The lead changed hands 6 times in the process, before the Cowboys finally took advantage of an inexplicable Russell Wilson interception in overtime to set up Brandon Aubrey for a 46-yard field goal to win the game. It was Aubrey's 64-yard field goal at the end of regulation that sent the game to overtime. A once-in-a-lifetime boot for most professionals that seems almost ho-hum for the league's biggest leg. Cowboys kickers have a habit of bailing out coaches who mismanage endgame scenarios the moment their team crosses that fake field goal range line. And Brian Schottenheimer appears to be no exception. After a Prescott pass to Jake Ferguson got the ball to midfield with 9 seconds left, the Cowboys decided against using their 2 remaining timeouts and their $60 million per year quarterback to make Aubrey's kick easier. Instead, they handed the ball off to Javonte Williams for a 3-yard gain. Aubrey came through, but that sort of late-game management won't play well when the Cowboys try to beat stiffer competition. The Giants weren't supposed to give the Cowboys much trouble after an ugly loss to the Commanders in Week 1. But in what was seen as potentially his final start as a pro QB if he played poorly, Wilson put together his best start since leaving Seattle. Through the end of regulation, his 93.1 total QBR was the second best mark of the day and would have been the best mark he posted in a game since the 2021 season. After hitting Malik Neighbors with a 48-yard touchdown pass to take the lead back for the Giants with 25 seconds to go, Wilson was 27 of 36 for 433 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and no picks. He took just 2 sacks on 39 dropbacks and added a first down on a 15-yard scramble. Of course, I'm leaving overtime out of that equation, and that appeared to be the moment when the carriage turned into a pumpkin. The Giants couldn't score on the second drive of the extra session, when a field goal would have won them the game. When Wilson got the ball back again, he threw an incomprehensible interception under pressure. Generously, I'd like to think that he was trying to throw the ball out of bounds in Neighbors' direction, or somewhere close enough to make it a 50-50 ball, and just missed by about 5 yards. However, there was nothing in the pass concept suggesting that Wilson was throwing somewhere Neighbors was supposed to be on that play. The interception didn't end the game. The Cowboys only took over on their own 30-yard line, but it changed the Giants' best-case scenario from a win to a tie. Before then, though, Wilson was having a blast picking the Cowboys apart deep. On throws traveling 20 or more yards in the air during regulation, Wilson went 7 of 10 for 264 yards and 3 scores. The last time somebody completed 7 or more deep passes in a game was when Nick Mullins did it for the Vikings against the Lions on Christmas Eve in 2023. And frankly, while these aren't easy throws, the only one of these completions that was really spectacular was the late TD pass to Neighbors to take the lead. I say that less to disparage what Wilson did and more to just emphasize how vacant and open for business the Cowboys' defense was downfield. Wilson picked them apart with big throws against all kinds of coverages. The Giants hit 2 long completions against Tampa 2, where linebackers Kenneth Murray Jr. and Jack Sanborn couldn't get near seam routes from Wan'Dale Robinson. Neighbors torched Trevon Diggs off the line for a big gain on a fade. Wilson hit a couple more go balls against 3 deep looks, where Diggs and fellow starting cornerback Kaiir Elam just couldn't get close enough to squeeze routes. And then there were a pair of long completions against quarters coverage, where the 2 corners were simply going to have to run with the Giants' wide receivers and couldn't do so. Personnel-wise, perhaps none of this should be surprising. Elam wasn't able to get on the field consistently for much of his tenure with the Bills, and he wasn't convincing when Buffalo did get him in the lineup. Murray, another former first-rounder and fellow addition for the Cowboys this offseason, has allowed a career passer rating north of 107 in coverage. And Sanborn is in Dallas because he played under new defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus in Chicago and came cheap, with the former undrafted free agent making $1.5 million in 2025. Diggs, meanwhile, is the microcosm of why things are so frustrating for the Cowboys on defense and unlikely to get better. He has struggled to get back to his former form after tearing his ACL early in the 2023 season, but it's going to be even more difficult in 2025 because of what the Cowboys have done to their roster. Last season, even with Micah Parsons sidelined for 4 games, ankle, the Cowboys were 6th in pressure rate and 2nd in sack rate. In fact, Dallas led the league in both categories across Parsons. 4 years with the organization before his recent trade to Green Bay. Without Parsons, the Cowboys are still generating pressures, but the sacks haven't come. They rank 6th in pressure rate, but just 19th in sack rate, and that has come against 2 of the most sack-friendly quarterbacks in football in Wilson and Jalen Hurts. Against pressure, Wilson was 6 of 10 for 99 yards and a touchdown throw before the overtime interception. When Diggs and currently injured cornerback Deron Bland were at their best during the Dan Quinn days in Dallas, the presence and even the threat of Parsons influenced what opposing coordinators were comfortable calling. It was easier for two of the league's most aggressive corners to sit on routes, trusting that Parsons would get home before any receiver could get past them. And while that still led to some big plays and long completions, Diggs and Bland were able to more than make up for the missteps with league-leading interception totals. Now, without that reliable pass rush, the cornerbacks can't sit on routes at the sticks and trust that the ball is going to come out quick. They have to be prepared to consistently deal with scramble drills and plays out of structure. You might have noticed that Jaden Daniels went 3 of 10 for 44 yards on throws 10 or more yards downfield on Thursday night against Parsons' new team. Green Bay's corners, the weakest spot on its roster, suddenly have much easier lives as a product of their new star teammate. Even while allowing the explosives downfield, the Cowboys were able to survive by relying on New York's penchant for self-immolation in the red zone. In a matchup of last season's worst red zone offense against its worst red zone defense, the Cowboys swung the game in their favor by limiting the Giants to 1 touchdown, 3 field goals, and a turnover on downs across 5 trips inside the 20-yard line. One of those was on a meltdown from fill-in left tackle James Hudson III, who was benched and limited to special teams duties after he committed 2 unnecessary roughness penalties and 2 false starts in a 4-play sequence. One of the penalties cost the Giants a first and goal opportunity at the 2-yard line after a deep Robinson catch. It would have been one of the more unique moments of Sunday's action if Xavier Howard hadn't strung together 4 penalties in 6 plays for the Colts later in the afternoon. There isn't just one problem for the Giants in the red zone. One drive stalled because of the Hudson penalties. Another ended on downs when Cam Scatabo dropped a pass into the flat that would have produced a first down. Kenny Clark had back-to-back pressures to blow up another sequence and force the Giants into a field goal. In general, the Giants can't run the ball consistently, and the only truly dynamic playmaker they have in tight quarters is Neighbors. Through 2 weeks, by EPA per play, the Giants are the 4th best offense in the NFL outside the red zone, but the worst by a considerable margin inside the 20-yard line. I would say that has to regress toward the mean. But I was also saying that before the season, and well, it hasn't yet. The Cowboys narrowly avoided their nightmare scenario of starting 0-2 in the division. Amid the widespread frustration surrounding Parsons' departure, there are a few reasons to be optimistic. The run game has been surprisingly effective early this season, with Williams turning 18 carries into 97 yards against the Giants, including a 30-yard touchdown. As Gary Jones would happily tell you, Dallas's run defense is better than it has been in years past too, and with some better hands from CeeDee Lamb against the Eagles, they might be 2-0 right now. Of course, without a spectacular kick from Aubrey, the Cowboys might also be 0-2. Some back-and-forth battles are more spectacular than others. That fateful Bills-Chiefs game in the 2021 postseason was a prize fight, with 2 great teams trading haymakers and somehow surviving to land another shot. The Broncos-Colts game in Indianapolis was something closer to 2 teams opening the door for each other and refusing to go through. The last one to make a critical mistake was going to lose. That mistake came from the Broncos, who appeared to be escaping with a 2-point win after a Spencer Schrader field goal miss from 60 yards, only for a long conference among officials to end with defender Dondrea Tillman getting flagged 15 yards for leverage. He attempted to dive over the center and instead hit him with an Ultimate Warrior-esque big splash. Teammate Ayoma Uwazurike clearly pushed down on long snapper Luke Rhodes to help create more space for Tillman's leap. It's one of the more obscure rules in the NFL to decide a game in recent memory, but it is a clear and obvious foul. Schrader hit a 45-yarder with his ensuing kick to push the Colts to 2-0 and drop the Broncos to 1-1. From the Broncos side, this felt like the same story for the 2nd consecutive week, just told with a completely different plot and a new ending. Last week, an abysmal performance from Bo Nix kept the Titans in the game. But despite turning the ball over 4 times, the Broncos were able to ride a dominant defensive display against a hapless Titans offensive line to hold on to a narrow lead before sealing things up with their running game in the fourth quarter. This week, Nix was much better for most of the contest, going 22 of 30 for 206 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and an interception. The jittery feet, inconsistent ball placement, and ill-advised decision-making that popped up throughout Nix's Week 1 performance weren't on display against the Colts, especially during an excellent first half. He made a beautiful throw on a scramble drill to hit Troy Franklin for 42 yards in the second quarter, wasn't sacked, and turned just under 37% of his dropbacks into first downs, which is right above league average. His 72.6 total QBR was up more than 45 points from where it fell in Week 1, when Nix finished 29th of 32 quarterbacks. But after turning the ball over 3 times against the Titans, Nix threw a critical interception in the fourth quarter, with the Broncos up 5 points and in position to either kick a field goal or potentially go up 2 scores with a touchdown. Nix was put into a drop-back passing situation on 3rd and 3 and attempted to throw the ball with defensive lineman Grover Stewart in his face. The tackle deflected the pass, and while Nix had an open Cortland Sutton on a crosser, the throw wobbled and sailed to safety Cam Bynum, who picked up his second INT in 2 games with Indianapolis. For the second week in a row, there also were special teams blunders, after a Colts field goal got them to within 1 score. The Broncos drove back into field goal range only for Will Lutz to miss a 42-yarder with 3:20 left that would have restored Denver's 5-point lead. On a day in which Schrader was 5 for 5 on field goal tries, the miss by Lutz meant the Broncos lost out on 6 points on trips near or into the red zone. And there were also penalty issues, after J.K. Dobbins had a 23-yard run to put the Broncos briefly into the red zone. He was flagged and penalized 5 yards for spiking the football. On the next play, the Broncos ran Dobbins for no gain, and tight end Adam Troutman was flagged for a face mask penalty, pushing the Broncos into a 1st and 25 situation. A screen on 3rd and 24 got them back into field goal range, but the penalties brought the drive to a halt and kept them from scoring a touchdown that probably would have sealed the game. Last week, the Broncos had a significant margin of error for mistakes on offense and special teams, because their defense was able to bully the opposing offense. But this week, the Broncos' defense wasn't able to carry Sean Payton's team to a victory. It allowed the Colts to average more than 7 yards per play and make 6 trips into the red zone. And Indy became only the 2nd team in NFL history, after the 2024 Commanders, to go 2 consecutive games without a punt, fumble, or interception. The Broncos weren't able to slow down the Colts' run game in particular, with Jonathan Taylor gashing Denver for 165 yards on 25 carries. Though the Colts lost Ryan Kelly and Will Freeze to the Vikings in free agency and swapped out Anthony Richardson Sr., who played a meaningful role in the quarterback run game, for Daniel Jones, who has mostly been limited to sneaks and scrambles. They've been extremely impressive on the ground to start the season. They were able to take advantage of a tactic that's becoming widespread around the NFL. Defenses have been stemming or making slight adjustments to their alignment or front just before the snap for years. But after seeing it come more into vogue with the best college defenses in recent seasons, we're seeing more NFL defenses use it to create confusion for blocking schemes just before the snap. On Sunday, the Colts hit 3 first downs in the second half on run plays in which the Broncos stemmed just before the snap, trying to change the blocking calculus for the offensive line or free up their linebackers to attack the football. Those runs all hit the places the Broncos were making late adjustments. There's nothing wrong with stemming or making late adjustments on the front as a tool. But just as it creates uncertainty for the offense, it can also make things hairy for the defense on the fly. Take the 68-yard run by Taylor in the fourth quarter on the drive after the Knicks interception. It's tough to see on replay, but just before the play begins, edge defender Jonathan Cooper sneaks one gap to the interior and tries to create more difficult blocking angles for the run blitz that's coming from cornerback Daquan McMillian. The Colts are running a wham concept, where the tight end comes across the play after the snap and attempts to take on an unblocked defensive lineman. In this case, Tyler Warren has to get on his horse to try to influence nose tackle DJ Jones. Jones nearly makes the tackle for a loss, but Warren does just enough to get him out of Taylor's way, while McMillian is blocked out of the play by Michael Pittman Jr. Now, the Broncos have to improvise. Alex Singleton ends up in the gap where Cooper was before he stemmed, but Taylor does a great job of quickly regaining his balance and juking Singleton before running away from him. Taylor actually has two potential lanes to hit for huge gains after beating Singleton. He chooses to go outside, simply accelerating away from safety Brandon Jones and heading up the sideline. The Broncos thrive in coverage, meanwhile, by playing a ton of man. With cornerback Pat Surtain II capable of taking on anybody one-on-one, the Broncos played man coverage on 56.3% of opposing dropbacks last season, the second highest rate in the NFL. They led the league in EPA per dropback, minus 7.7 on those man coverage snaps, and were comfortably the best defense in man by the same metric against the Titans in Week 1. Yet on Sunday, Jones went 13 of 22 against man coverage for 221 yards. The Broncos pressured him on more than 54% of his man coverage dropbacks, but turned only one of those 12 pressures into a sack. Jones and his offense deserve credit for what they accomplished in those moments. But Colts coach Shane Steichen also had an answer for all the man coverage ready to go. Everyone's favorite man-beating play in the NFL is mesh, the concept that almost always includes two crossers passing in opposite directions over the middle of the field, an over route above those crossers, and a wheel or rail route out of the backfield. Steichen's Colts run mesh more than most teams, and while it wasn't always a success, they went back to mesh over and over again in key situations Sunday, when they felt as if the Broncos were likely to play man. I counted at least 4 instances of mesh in important spots. 2 were disappointing. Pittman dropped one crosser in the red zone, and though Warren got open on an underneath drag route on 4th and 2 with 13 minutes to go, Jones was pressured and sailed his throw. He also had Taylor open on a wheel route against Tillman for what could have been a touchdown, but it worked in 2 other situations. Taylor caught a touchdown pass in the red zone when the Broncos simply didn't cover the wheel route, giving Jones one of the easiest throws he'll ever make for a score. And then on a critical 3rd and 6, with 1:50 to go, the Colts not only dialed up mesh again, but also threw at Surtain, hitting Alec Pierce on the underneath drag route for a huge first down and forcing the Broncos to use their final timeout. From there, Steichen curiously chose to take the air out of the football. Indy ran twice for 2 yards, drew the clock down to 17 seconds, took a timeout, and then ran the ball a 3rd time with Taylor, who lost 2 yards on a failed counter run. The Colts obviously were hoping to gain more than 1 yard on those 3 plays, but I was surprised to see Steichen almost entirely take the ball out of Jones' hands. Settling for what ended up being a 60-yard field goal was a bad process, even if it ended up working out well for them in the end. It seems foolish to start the discussion about this game without touching on the biggest storyline: prosody. It's clear that Bengals star quarterback Joe Burrow is going to miss time after suffering a serious toe injury during Sunday's win over the Jaguars, with further testing to determine whether he will be week to week as he heals or sidelined for several months if the injury requires surgery. Update. Sources told ESPN's Adam Schefter that Burrow will need surgery. Neither option would be good. But it's easier to imagine the Bengals hanging on and playing vaguely .500 ball with Jake Browning at quarterback for 1 month than it would be for 3. When we last saw Browning starting in 2023, he went 4-3 and had a 60.9 total QBR, which was good for 9th in the NFL from Week 10 onward. The Bengals helped Browning out by posting the league's 2nd-best average yak per reception over that span. But he also had the league's 3rd-best off-target rate and 3rd-best precise pass rate. the latter measuring how reliably each QB puts the ball on his receivers in stride with throws near the torso. Browning was throwing some of the shortest passes in the league, but he's an accurate passer. He's also prone to more negative plays than Burrow, as Browning ran worse than average sack and interception rates during his time under center. While he was sacked only once on Sunday, the backup did throw 3 interceptions after entering the lineup. 2 were wild throws under pressure, including one where the Bengals were not able to pass off a simple twist up front. The third was an attempt to fit a dig into a space that simply was not there. Those sort of throws are going to happen when you haven't played live football in more than a year. If all you knew about this game was that Burrow went out in the second quarter, Browning threw 3 interceptions, and the Jaguars scored 27 points, you probably would have assumed that this was going to be a 4th straight losing home opener for the Bengals. And frankly, this should have been a Jags win. When Devin Lloyd intercepted Browning's pass and handed the ball to Trevor Lawrence's offense on the Cincinnati 12-yard line with 5:22 to go. The Jaguars were in the driver's seat. Up 3, they needed 1 touchdown to make it a 2-score game, which could have put things out of reach. Instead, Jacksonville melted down. It had some solid success running the football for the 2nd consecutive week. But a misdirection attempt with Travis Etienne Jr. on first down lost 4 yards. A second down pass went off Dyami Brown's fingertips, his 2nd drop of the game. After a 3rd down run got the Jags to 4th and 5, Liam Cohen called for the Jags to run mesh. Yes, everybody runs it, and often in key situations. The Bengals responded by playing zone, which isn't the ideal look for mesh, but Brian Thomas got open right over the ball, only to drop Lawrence's pass and turn the ball over on downs. Let's talk about the play itself before we get to the decision. Thomas is being hounded on social media after this game for wanting to avoid hits, with the most damning evidence being Lawrence's 2nd interception of this game, where Thomas appeared to stick one arm out half-heartedly with a collision coming. It's not a great look, though I'm not sure why Thomas would suddenly exhibit some reticence about contact after breaking plenty of tackles a year ago and racking up 146 yards on tight window catches. Per NFL Next Gen stats, I'm also not sure the 4th down incompletion has anything to do with the other play. While the Jags are running these crossing moots, Thomas's shallow route has only about 2 yards of depth, meaning he needed to pick up 3 yards after the catch to at least move the chains. Because he's facing zone, he is supposed to throttle down and present a stationary target for Lawrence. Against man, he would continue running his route to run away from coverage. As the ball arrives, Thomas begins to turn upfield to look and see where he needs to run for the first down, not whether a hit is coming. It seems more likely that he took his eye off the ball a fraction of a second too early than anything else, although only the second-year wideout can say for sure. Should the Jags have kicked a field goal to go up 6? Overwhelmingly, we can say the answer to this question is no, and it shouldn't even be considered anything revolutionary or aggressive at this point. Going for it allows you to score a game-sealing touchdown or hold on to the football with a first down or penalty. Even if you fail, you're handing the ball over deep in opposing territory, with that opponent often anchored to a game-tying field goal down 3 as opposed to striking for a game-winning touchdown. Down 6, that team would have no choice but to play 4-down football and go for the jugular. ESPN's model had the decision to go for it as a 5.9% win probability swing relative to trying a field goal. The Bengals ultimately didn't settle for 3, but their drive also required 2 4th-down conversions, including a 25-yard pass interference penalty on Travis Hunter that extended the game and served as Cincinnati's biggest play. And if you want to treat what we saw as gospel, of course, the Bengals proved that Jacksonville kicking a field goal to go up 6 wouldn't have made a difference, given that they marched downfield for a touchdown on a long field anyway. Hunter is off to a slow start as a pro. Through 2 games, he has 9 catches for 55 yards on 14 targets as a receiver. An early injury to Jerrion Jones forced Hunter to play 60% of the defensive snaps on Sunday. And while he forced Andre Iosivas out of bounds to prevent a catch, Hunter allowed a first down via illegal contact before the 25-yard pass interference call that extended the game. With Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the other side, it seems telling that the Bengals were willing to put their game on the line with a fade to Iosivas, their third-best wideout, isolated against Hunter. It's obviously too early to draw meaningful conclusions, but so far, Hunter hasn't been a difference maker on either side of the ball. Realistically, the Jags should have put this game away before it came down to a final drive. In the second quarter, Lawrence threw a brutal interception in the red zone under pressure from Trey Hendrickson, and then nearly threw another, only for that one to be overturned. That second drive ended when Lawrence scrambled 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, threw a pass to Brenton Strange, and argued for pass interference on what was an illegal forward pass. Brown dropped what should have been an easy touchdown catch on a crossing route in the fourth quarter, too. Both those drives ended in field goals when they should have been touchdowns. Of course, this stuff happens to the Jaguars all the time. The malaise that eventually ended the Doug Peterson era and brought Cohen into town started with the help of Browning, who took on an 8-3 Jaguars team in his second start filling in for Burrow. The Jags were competing for the top seed in the AFC that day, but after Lawrence was injured late and the Jags lost in overtime, it started a brutal losing streak. They lost 18 of Peterson's final 23 games in charge. They went from ascending to rapidly descending overnight. And with that in mind, you can understand why there's a fatalistic feeling about what's going on with the Jags, even though I'm not sure it's entirely supported by the evidence. Thomas stopping on a route is proof that he doesn't want to get hit. Lawrence visibly waving off a Cohen criticism in the fourth quarter is a sign that he's not impressed with his new coach. Blowing the late lead with some dismal work in the red zone is a sign that these are the same old Jaguars. Maybe they are. I'm just not sure I'm comfortable drawing that conclusion after 2 games, especially given that they were a drop or a pass interference penalty away from starting 2-0, that Cohen has finally gotten the run game going, and that the defense has nearly as many interceptions in 2 games. 5, as it did all of last season. 6 are more meaningful positives to me. And as for the Bengals, well, luck is in the eye of the beholder. It's obviously not lucky to lose your MVP candidate at quarterback for a significant stretch of time in September. And yet, does this feel like a team that deserves to be 2-0? The offense melted down against the Browns, who lost after their kicker missed an extra point and a chip shot field goal in the second half. The Bengals turned the ball over 3 times and needed some very fortuitous drops to win Sunday. I'm not sure they can keep playing this way and expect to keep racking up victories. And unfortunately, with a 2-game road trip against the Vikings and Broncos to come, they're about to face much stiffer defensive competition without their best player.
All right, Tyler, man, we just saw the first round of the WNBA playoffs kick off and some really interesting results already. I gotta say, the Atlanta Dream, they really impressed me. Like an 80-68 win against the Indiana Fever, that's a pretty solid statement, especially for their first playoff win since, 2018, I think it was? What happened there, buddy? Because, I mean, the Fever, they've got some serious firepower, right? Like, you would expect a closer game or maybe even an Indiana win.
Oh, Marcus, absolutely. I mean, wow, what a game, huh? The Dream, they locked them down. You know, we've talked a lot about Carl Smesko kind of revamping their offense this season, getting them to click, but the defense, man, that's what really showed up big time in Game 1. I mean, they held Indiana to 15 points or less in 2 quarters, the second and the fourth. It tells you everything you need to know, you know? They frustrated them, slowed down that high-powered offense, and you know, despite having like the 3rd fewest combined playoff games on their roster, they showed zero lack of experience. They just kept their foot on the gas, just ran away with it, man. It was impressive, truly, like totally dominating.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And that's the thing. It's like, What does this all mean for Indiana, though? I mean, Tyler, they're winless in the postseason now since 2016, right? And they got swept last season, too. Is this just, a continuation of that, like sort of a bad streak, or are there deeper issues going on with the Fever right now? Because Kelsey Mitchell had 27 points, which is a playoff career high for her, but it kind of felt like she was like pretty much alone out there, didn't it? Just, carrying the load all by herself.
Oh, she was. Bless her heart. She was pulling the wagon by herself pretty much, Marcus. I mean, only Odyssey Sims in double figures, and then the bench gave him a measly 5 points outside of garbage time. That's just not going to cut it, man. They shot a dismal 34.9% from the field, and get this, a brutal 2 for 15 from 3. 2 for 15. That's just awful. And they've had so many season-ending injuries, They lack that depth right now. That's a big, big problem. The biggest thing, though, I think, was the composure. Man, the wheels they came off in that fourth quarter, partly due to frustration with the officiating, but you gotta hold it together, They gotta get Damaris Dantas back or something for Game 2, or they're in really, really deep trouble.
All right, so from one dominant performance to another, let's pivot a little here to the Minnesota Lynx. They just absolutely cruised 101-72 against the Golden State Valkyries. I mean, they were actually down 6 at the end of the first quarter, which is kind of wild. And then, boom, just flipped the switch in the second, went on a huge 15-5 run. What was the catalyst there, Tyler? What totally changed for Minnesota after that first quarter? Because it seemed like a completely different team.
Well, Marcus, the catalyst, for the Lynx, it's gotta be Natisha Heidemann. Oh, she's just been a spark plug all season. She checks in with like 3 minutes left in the first, and everything it totally shifts. I mean, she finishes with a career-high 18 points in 23 minutes. Talk about instant impact, man, like seriously. And then the Lynx, they never looked back, outscoring Golden State 54-34 in the last 2 quarters. It's that bench production, that depth they have. It's such a huge, huge factor for them. And Heidemann is like the prime example of it. They're just a really well-oiled machine, Minnesota. They really are.
Yeah, she really was. That's incredible. Like, what an impact. And conversely, though, what about the Valkyries, Tyler? Because they actually did have a really, really good start. Like 5 of 8 from 3 in that first quarter, which is 62.5%. That's really, really good shooting. But then it fell off a cliff, like totally collapsed. Is it just that Minnesota's defense is that good and just clamped them down? Or is Golden State just kind of struggling to find that consistency, particularly with their bench, because that seemed like a huge, huge issue for them?
Oh, absolutely, Marcus. The bench was the issue, man. No question about it. Outside of Kate Martin, who had 6 before the benches were cleared at the very end, they had nothing, like nothing. 17 points total from the bench compared to 42 for Minnesota, with Heidemann's 18 and Shepard adding 12, and even Dejana Carrington coming off injury contributing. I mean, Golden State can't solely rely on their starters. Their three-point shooting was great in that first, but they got to replicate that, and they need more from everybody. It's a tall task, going back to San Jose for Game 2, but they got to find something there. They just got to dig deep and find it.
It's going to be tough, man. It really is. And look, we've got this historical stat that says teams winning Game 1 in a best-of-3 series, they win the series like 71% of the time, right? 85-34 series record. That's pretty significant. I mean, do you see that holding true here for the Dream and the Lynx? Like, is it essentially a wrap for Indiana and Golden State? Or can they actually pull something out, and like make a series of it? Is there any hope?
Oh, that's a tough stat to fight against, Marcus. It truly is. I mean, 71%? That's a big hill to climb, especially for teams like Indiana, who are already battling injuries, and Golden State, who's just kind of, struggling to find that depth like we just talked about.
I think for the Dream and the Lynx, they've shown such dominant performances. I really do think they're in a prime position to close it out. We still got the Liberty Mercury and Storm Aces games coming up, and man, I just hope those bring as much intensity as these first ones did, you know? But yeah, it's looking good for Atlanta and Minnesota, like really good.
Hey yo, ATL, stand up. You're locked in with the livest, realest, rawest talking the game. This is the Bro Code Podcast ATL, where the culture talks back, the vibes stay heavy, and the code always respected. Don't touch that dial. Keep it right here, because we breaking the code live from the A.
After remaining in negotiation shadows the first 6 weeks of Jonathan Kuminga's restricted free agency, Golden State Warriors owner Joe Lacob emerged from behind the curtain in mid-August. General Manager Mike Dunleavy sent a weekend request for an in-person Monday morning meeting August 11 in Miami. The 10 a.m. ET timing mattered. Lacob planned to attend the Golden State Valkyries game that night in San Francisco. But the matter was urgent enough to pull Lacob across the country. Bargaining between Kuminga's side and Dunleavy's front office had hit a wall. The Warriors had shut down sign-in trades, steadfast all offseason in declining frameworks of Royce O'Neal and second-round compensation from the Phoenix Suns, or Malik Monk, and a future first-round pick from the Sacramento Kings. Sources said. Kuminga had made clear his lack of interest in the 2-year, $45 million standing offer the Warriors had put in front of him because of the team option on the second season and waiving the de facto no-trade clause. So, the four most relevant parties, Lacob, Dunleavy, Kuminga, and Kuminga's agent Aaron Turner, convened for what felt like the most significant conversation a Warriors offseason stuck in the mud. They talked numbers and structure, and the 4 years of basketball scars that had led them to this stalemate. But there was an underlying question from the Lacob side that felt most pressing. Do you want to be here? The $21.7 million salary the Warriors were proposing to give Kuminga next season was more immediate money than he would receive in the theoretical Phoenix and Sacramento offers, though far less in long-term guarantees. It would make him the fourth highest-paid player on a team with 3 Hall of Famers. Considering the frigid nature of the restricted market, the Warriors, sources said, felt the offer more than fair and Kuminga's reluctance a sign of his desire to escape. But everything within this 4-year, multi-character tug-of-war is layered. The team-friendly structure was designed and pitched to Kuminga as a contract more easily moved when eligible in January. They could keep and bury him on the bench or trade him to an undesirable situation. He has fierce belief in his talents and is searching for a path to somewhere he believes will grant him an opportunity to flourish. So Kuminga turned the question back on Lacob and the Warriors. September brings an extra level of urgency for NBA teams without complete rosters. The Warriors, entering the final stages of Stephen Curry's feasible contention window, only have 9 of their 15 spots officially filled 2 weeks prior to training camp. Kuminga is the domino that triggers the rest of their plans. So, it's no surprise Kuminga's phone lit up on the business front over the past few weeks. His star teammates Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green have reached out, checking on Kuminga, his plans, and his mindset. Kuminga's agent Turner has delivered the latest proposals from the front office after a week of increased negotiations, but still no resolution. The Warriors have strengthened their effort. Late last week, Dunleavy offered Kuminga a 3-year, $75.2 million deal with a team option in the 3rd season. Sources told ESPN. That's $48.3 million guaranteed in the first 2 seasons and basically the same per year salary as fellow restricted free agent Josh Giddey, who re-signed with the Chicago Bulls for 4 years and $100 million. The difference? Half the length in a team-controlled 3rd season, and a subliminal understanding that the contract is more trade asset than commitment to a partnership. Dunleavy and the Warriors are requesting the same structure as their previous proposal on the 2-year, $45 million framework, a team option on the 2nd season, and a waiving of the inherent no-trade clause. Sources said their unwillingness to budge on the team option in those specific two offers is a major part of the holdup. Kuminga, gripping to the first lever control he has had in his young career, is resistant to the idea of it, sources said. The only non-team option offer the Warriors have made to Kuminga is 3 years and $54 million fully guaranteed. Sources said an average of $18 million per season. Turner and Kuminga have spent much of the summer requesting a player option as part of their preferred deals, sources said, showing a willingness to dip down into the $20 million per year range for it, but believing a team option deal should cost around $30 million per year. The Warriors have also viewed a player option as a non-starter, sources said. So, Turner and Kuminga have presented alternatives. One of the latest counters, sources said, came in the past week. 1 year on a negotiable number, presented as a souped-up version of the qualifying offer, getting Kuminga a financial bump up from $8 million, and unrestricted free agency next summer, while wiping away the inherent no-trade clause and allowing the Warriors to use him as an expiring contract at the deadline. It would serve as a bridge deal that gives both sides the ability to examine another year together, but also a much more trade-friendly salary number as opposed to a qualifying offer, which has an October 1 deadline. It is similar to a concept the Brooklyn Nets proposed to Cam Thomas. Dunleavy declined the concept, sources said, and it is Lacob who is apparently against a balloon 1-year offer, leaving the Warriors too vulnerable to losing Kuminga next summer for nothing. So, the stalemate of the summer drags further into September. Lacob has been a central figure in Kuminga's NBA career since the beginning. Bob Myers was team president and Dunleavy assistant general manager when they drafted Kuminga in 2021. They gave the collective green light, but Lacob was a driving force in selection when others, including a few on the coaching staff, voiced a Franz Wagner preference. Sources said, Lacob has remained a staunch Kuminga supporter and vocal believer in his long-term future. He voiced an unwillingness to include Kuminga in a proposed trade from Chicago for Alex Caruso a couple of seasons back, sources said, and was still glowing about Kuminga's performance in May after he rose from out of Steve Kerr's first-round rotation to the team's leading scorer in the second-round loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The two sat courtside together at a Valkyries game soon after the series, and Lacob asked Kuminga to keep an open mind about a future together, sources said. But Lacob, while involved, opinionated, and willing to spend, has never demanded specific rotation decisions, sources said. Kerr, a 4-time champion coach, will be given the same power he has always had over his operation in his 12th season with the Warriors. Kuminga's side understands that and knows, considering the history and roster dynamics in place. Reunion comes with a likely bench role and the possibility of being minimized for stretches of the season. Kuminga's personal relationship with Kerr isn't a problem. The messaging from Kerr and the Warriors is that Kuminga would have a substantial role to open next season, per sources. They could use his youth and scoring on the wing. But in negotiations, Kuminga's side has regularly referred to some postseason comments where Kerr highlighted the difficulty of fitting Kuminga next to Curry, Butler, and Green for heavy minutes and expecting to win at the highest level. It's proof to them that the basketball fit is less than ideal for the trajectory of Kuminga's career. That's why they voiced this message to the Warriors front office in the process. Sell the contract, not the basketball. Phoenix, for years, $80 to $88 million. In Sacramento, 3 years, $63 to $66 million. Have attached player options to their proposed deals and pitched a starting power forward job, sources said. That isn't available with the Warriors. He wouldn't get the 30 minutes per night consistently, and the starting and closing role he desperately craves. That's what brings the conversation back to the meeting with Lacob. In the lead-up, there was sentiment around Kuminga that Lacob would step in and at least deliver the type of financial pledge that signifies the long-term belief in Kuminga that he so often voices. Or if not, if the Warriors weren't willing to commit to what Turner and Kuminga were requesting, maybe Lacob would show more of a willingness to greenlight a trade elsewhere and proceed with basketball divorce that is often felt necessary. They still don't believe that box has been checked. While the NBA gathered in Las Vegas for Summer League in July, Turner presented Dunleavy and John Phelps, the Warriors cap executive who helped concoct the 1+1 offer to Kuminga, with a 3-year, $82 million offer, including a player option sources said. The Warriors have been hesitant to go that rich for that long for Kuminga, showing a concern about how the deal might age, sources said. The Curry, Butler, and Green contracts all expire after the 2026-27 season. At the moment, they project to have clean books and flexibility in summer 2027. The first season salary is also a crucial point in negotiation. While the Warriors haven't officially made any moves this summer, they've lined up all their other roster targets to pursue after the Kuminga domino falls. Sources said the Warriors have planned to at least use their taxpayer mid-level. Al Horford is a target, and have had strong discussions with veterans D'Anthony Melton, Gary Payton II, and Seth Curry. Sources said it's why Curry, Butler, and Green are not agitating behind the scenes. They know the strategy, sources said, and have approved that anticipated result. But the tentative plan hard caps them at the second apron and means $22.5 million is the most they could give Kuminga next season while holding 15 roster players, a figure that has so far proven too low for Kuminga to accept in a multi-year deal attached to a team option. Kuminga's greatest leverage is a one-year, $8 million qualifying offer attached to an inherent no-trade clause. As the summer has dragged on and the discomfort in these negotiations has grown further, Kuminga has warmed further to the idea. The decision to sign, it could very well play out up to the October. One deadline, unless either side caves. The financial drawbacks are straightforward. Kuminga will be turning down as much as $15.3 million extra next season and risking a career spiral that never allows him to recoup that money. It has become an extension league, and Kuminga would be declining a larger set salary number to extend off into his next deal. But Kuminga has stated a belief that he has multi-time all-star potential. He has lined up loss of value insurance to protect himself in the event he signs a qualifying offer. He's intrigued by the possibility of unrestricted free agency next summer, sources said, when at least 10 teams are set to have real cap space. He isn't obsessing over every lost dollar in the moment and sees a qualifying offer as a clean vehicle for career control. Rival teams, most notably the Kings and Suns, have recruited him this summer, and his conversations with executives and coaches and others around the league have only emboldened his long-term belief that the risk could be worth the reward. But there's a reason he hasn't taken a qualifying offer yet. Turner and Kuminga are holding out in case something more appealing, via contract offer or sign-and-trade, materializes, in part because of belief in how imperative it is for the Warriors to avoid having him on the qualifying offer. If Kuminga returns on it, he can veto any trade next season and, on an $8 million expiring contract without bird rights attached, his market value is greatly diminished even if he were to approve a trade. The Warriors will lose control of a crucial roster-building tool during one of Curry's final contention seasons, walk a potential major distraction into the locker room, and be at great risk of watching Kuminga, their 2021 7 pick, walk away for nothing next summer. But there are side benefits to that overall net negative that are being considered as part of the equation, sources said. Kuminga returning on the qualifying offer will allow the Warriors to remain below the first apron and, as a repeater tax team, save nearly $70 million in luxury tax money. They would still have Kuminga, a rotation wing, for a season on a cheap deal and would maintain his bird rights, giving him the opportunity to revisit a long-term deal next summer or get value out of him in a sign-and-trade scenario, similar to what they did when Klay Thompson departed for Dallas. The Warriors worked Thompson into a 6-team deal that delivered them Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson, but that would require Kuminga's cooperation. If he's on a qualifying offer, he would still plan to show up to training camp and be a part of the season's Warriors team, sources said, but their side views the qualifying offer route as an organizational burning of the long-term relationship. They would anticipate a clean split next summer, sources said, without motivation to let the Warriors recoup value unless necessary to get Kuminga where he would want to go. As the Miami conversation laid bare, this is a relationship where trust and commitment from both sides appear to be lacking. Does Kuminga want to be there? Do the Warriors truly want him, or are they just searching for a more valuable time to trade him? A temporary reunion remains the expected scenario, but cap and restricted free agency dynamics have kept them in a summer staring contest. Both are waiting for the other to blink.
Hey yo, ATL, stand up. You're locked in with the livest, realest, rawest talking the game. This is the Bro Code Podcast ATL, where the culture talks back, the vibes stay heavy, and the code always respected. Don't touch that dial. Keep it right here, because we breaking the code live from the A.
The MLB playoffs are just around the corner and shaping up to be a wide-open affair. For the second consecutive season, there's not a single team on pace to win 100 or more games. That means there's plenty of parity across the majors, which is bound to carry over to October. With that in mind, we asked 19 baseball players, executives, and scouts, who is the team to beat in the National League? And who is the team to beat in the American League? There was little uniformity to their answers, though most agreed on one thing: a sleeper team that people in both leagues agreed could make a run in October. Here's how those in the game view the upcoming postseason. The NL's team to beat is Milwaukee Brewers, 7 votes. Phillies, 5. Dodgers, 4. Padres, 2. Mets, 1. Voting was as tight as you might imagine, considering the Brewers are mixed in with the defending champion Dodgers and high-priced Phillies. Those teams dominated our poll, leaving few votes for anyone else. All 3 teams can slug their way to the World Series, but the Dodgers have a distinct advantage in the power game, out-homering both Philadelphia and Milwaukee by a wide margin this regular season. However, Philly employs easily the best closer of the 3, a crucial element that could help finish off those tight October games. Still, it was the Brewers who won our poll because they've played at such a high level in all areas, while also possessing a deep and healthy starting staff. Why the Brewers? NL player. They seem like a team that has a really solid plan and cohesive approach, and they seem like they're on the same page. I just like how they play, and they've done it all year. Why can't they keep it going? NL scout. They still have to figure out the back end of their pen, but in a short series, they have the luxury of sending one of their good starters to the bullpen, and they might just run into enough home runs to keep pace in October. NL exec. Getting the bye will be huge for them. They've been knocked out in those short series several times. This will let them breathe a bit. Plus, their starting staff is so good. If I'm Milwaukee, I want the longer series. Biggest threats to Brewers. Philadelphia Phillies. NL player. It's simple for me. They still have good pitching, and they've been there before. Playoffs are about home runs, and they can hit them. NL player. Their lineup is a little top-heavy, but they have enough at the bottom that can do the job. If those guys show up, then that lineup is really good. Their pen is incredible with Joan Duran. NL exec. It's their last hurrah, right? They have older players, some of whom will be free agents at the end of the season. I just can't see Bryce Harper going his career without a ring, and this is their best chance, even without Zach Wheeler. Los Angeles Dodgers. NL player. When we played them, they didn't have a good series, but they seem to turn it on when they need to. That's the sign of a champion. I think their offense will have a big October and lead them like it did last year. NL exec. Talent will win out, and they have the potential for healthiest pitching staff all year in October. If not Milwaukee, Philadelphia, or Los Angeles, then who? Truth be told, these insiders responded before the latest Mets free fall became so dramatic. New York was on an 8-game losing streak that ended with an extra innings win over Texas on Sunday. But hey, anyone can get hot at the right time, right? The Mets proved that last year. But they have to prove they can even get into the October party before they can think about making a deep run. The Padres are hard to figure out, but that doesn't make them less dangerous than any other contender. Some days, their offense goes into hibernation, but they can shut anyone down in the late innings. Their bullpen is that good and could take them far despite the loss of Jason Adam. San Diego Padres. NL player. I like San Diego. They're hungry. They made all the right deadline moves, and they have the experience of getting close, but not going all the way. NL exec. There's a lot to like about San Diego, but they can still be pitched to even with their deadline additions. It's like they disappear sometimes. If they survive a wild card round and get some home games, Petco Park's energy could wake them up. Still a great bullpen. New York Mets. NL player. The Mets are really good. I know they've struggled, but I'm banking on them getting hot like they did last postseason. Sometimes you get your worst baseball behind you, then find your groove. I like the Mets to do that. NL Scout. Their lineup 1 to 9 has to carry them. I'm not sure how they'll piece it together on the mound, but sometimes you find rookie magic in an arm or two. If two of Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, and Brandon Sproat can come through, why not the Mets? The AL's team to beat is Toronto Blue Jays, 6 votes. Tigers, 5. Yankees, 3. Red Sox, 3. Astros, 2. The voting was even tighter in the AL than in the NL. For teams received 3 or more votes. But it was the Blue Jays who edged out the competition with just 1 more vote than Detroit. Home field advantage could make the difference for the AL's top 2 teams, both of whom dominate at home but hover around .500 on the road. The Tigers play so well at Comerica Park, where they are able to run rampant on the bases and go first to third on teams. And of course, they feature Tarik Skubal at the top of their rotation. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays can get the newly renovated Rogers Center rocking as hard as any stadium in the majors. That top seed in the AL is up for grabs down the stretch, and one of these 2 teams is highly likely to get it. Why the Blue Jays? AL player. They're one of the most rounded teams in the AL. They have some experience, especially in the rotation, and have a little bit of everything in the lineup. That's tough to contend with in a series. I just think they have the most complete team. AL Scout. As good as Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., and George Springer have been, it's the contributions from guys from the left side of the plate like Nathan Lukes and Addison Barger which make Toronto really dangerous. They have some balance, which has eluded them. AL Exec. I love their team, but I question their bullpen. It hasn't been very stout in the second half. Tommy Nance might be a guy to lean on. Biggest threat to Blue Jays, Detroit Tigers AL player. Detroit is high up on that list of teams to beat. They know how to win. That's the biggest thing. They proved that last offseason, and they've turned that park into a nice home field advantage. I know they go first to third better than anyone. That's a key, playing in that ballpark. AL Scout. Sometimes seeing a team play a lot, you can get a more negative opinion than what their record is, and sometimes it can be a more positive opinion than their record. With the Tigers, it's the latter, and they already have a pretty good record. AL Exec. I've tried to fill out playoff rotations without a true ace. It's really tough. So having Tarik Skubal makes all the difference for me. Unless he runs out of gas, Detroit is my pick. If not Toronto or Detroit, then who? A case can be made for any of the wildcard entrants, depending on where Houston finishes, as it remains in a tight division battle with Seattle. To pull off an October upset with big game experience oozing from the Astros and Yankees lineups. New York can also slug, of course, while the return of Yordan Alvarez makes Houston's offense ever so dangerous again. The Red Sox, on the other hand, have made the postseason only once, 2021, since winning the World Series in 2018. However, they feature a balanced lineup with playoff leadership in the form of Alex Bregman. Plus, Aroldis Chapman is about as good as it gets on the closer front. New York Yankees. AL Exec. I think their bullpen will get hot, and they have enough power bats to get through a weaker field in the AL. Boston Red Sox. AL player. It's the Red Sox. They are playing good baseball. They have formidable pitching, starting with Garrett Crochet, and their lineup is cohesive and looks like they have a good time together. They know how to win with Bregman there. Houston Astros. AL player. Everyone is forgetting that Yordan Alvarez missed most of the season. He's a difference maker. And when we played them, Framber Valdez and Hunter Brown were as good as any 2 pitchers. Houston is my pick. Everyone's October sleeper pick, Seattle Mariners. Until recently, the Mariners hadn't shown the league their best hand, ending up in the sleeper category because of it. Those we spoke to said Seattle simply has more upside available to it than any other team. AL player. A team that can get really hot that isn't playing its best baseball is Seattle. That pitching staff is legit. Cal, Raleigh hit 50 home runs, but they have other guys that are built for that moment, the spotlight moment. Randy Arozarena and Eugenio Suarez are two of them. They're built to win late. NL player. It's one of those lineups where everyone is waiting for them to put it all together. Their rotation is very talented, and they have one of the best closers in the league. I think they're one of those teams that, if they get hot at the right time, no one can beat them. AL exec. Seattle is one of its best teams we've seen there in years. If there's a real sleeper in this entire playoff field, it's the Seattle Mariners. AL exec. Seattle is my surprise team. I think a bad year for pitching in Seattle could get flipped on its head in the postseason with their starters picking it up. Cal, Raleigh tied Mickey Mantle's season record for most home runs by a switch hitter with his 54th, and the Seattle Mariners extended their winning streak to 9 by routing the Los Angeles Angels November 2nd Sunday to take sole possession of the American League West lead for the first time since June. You know, in today's age, it's hard not to go on your phone and people are talking about it, texting you about it. Raleigh told reporters about his achievements. I'm trying to do my best to block that out. I'm glad that we have something bigger to work towards. Batting left-handed, Raleigh hit a first-pitch homer to left center-off Kyle Hendricks for a 2-0 lead in the first inning. Mantle hit his 54 homers for the 1961 New York Yankees. I remember him talking about Mantle like he was a god, which he was. Raleigh said of a visit to Yankee Stadium as a youngster with his father. It's kind of cool to think about that. Raleigh's homer was his record-setting 43rd this season as a catcher, one more than Atlanta's Javi Lopez in 2003. To do what he has done offensively, to do what he does defensively, to do what he does with our pitching staff, you just marvel at all the things that he's accomplishing. Mariners manager Dan Wilson told reporters. On top of that, making history, and just in a very humble way. That's the kind of guy he is. He just wants to win, and that's where it all comes from. That's the driver. In his 5th Major League season, Raleigh had a previous high of 34 homers last year. He is too shy of tying the Mariners single-season record held by Ken Griffey Jr. 1997-1998. I don't mean to downplay the record at all. It's a very awesome and meaningful thing, Raleigh told reporters. But I'm not trying to go out there and try to hit homers or trying to break a certain record or anything. I'm just trying to help the team out any way I can. George Kirby matched his career high with 14 strikeouts as the Mariners completed a 4-game sweep and won for the 20th time in their last 23 home games. The Mariners, 82-68, moved 1 game ahead of Houston, 81-69, at the top of the division, winning 9 in a row for the first time since a 14-game streak from July 2nd to 17th, 2022, according to the Elias Sports Bureau. The Mariners had not been alone in first place since before play on June 3rd. It's the latest in a season that Seattle has been in first place since 2001, when the Mariners won their last division title. That 23-year drought is the longest active streak in the American League.
Made in